In the dead of night, an elderly black woman is stopped by police, accused of stealing her own car. They demand answers, their suspicion thick in the air as they question her presence in the vehicle. But when they check her ID, panic sets in. Who is she really? What happens next will leave you questioning the deep-rooted biases that led to this dangerous moment. Stay tuned to find out who she is and how the truth shatters everything they thought they knew. What would you do if this was your story? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening. Your support means everything. Marissa had always been the kind of teenager who lived for the weekends. Every Friday after school, she'd pick up her best friend, Tyra, and they'd drive around the city, blasting music from Marissa's old car, a beat-up but reliable 2006 Honda Civic. It wasn't much, but to Marissa, it was everything. It was her ticket to freedom, her little slice of independence in a world where she often felt trapped. Her life wasn't perfect, but she was used to it. Raised in a modest neighborhood on the edge of town, Marissa's family had always worked hard. Her mom, a nurse, and her dad, a construction worker, were constantly juggling shifts to make ends meet. But Marissa never complained. She had learned early that the hustle was just part of life, and so she worked after school, saving up every dime from her part-time job at the local cafe. Despite the struggles, there was a quiet joy in Marissa's world. Her friends, her family, and her routine gave her a sense of comfort. She wasn't rich, but she was content. She knew there were challenges, but she never imagined that one simple decision, driving down a familiar road on a Friday night, could send her life into a spiral. On this particular evening, the sun had just dipped below the horizon, and the streets were quieter than usual. The city lights painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. Marissa smiled as Tyra laughed beside her, recounting something silly that happened earlier in class. She was so absorbed in the conversation that she barely noticed the police car trailing behind her, its headlights flashing in the rearview mirror. Tyra finally noticed and raised an eyebrow. "Why are they following us?" Marissa shrugged, trying to brush it off. "Probably just making sure we're not speeding." But when the flashing lights blinked on, Marissa's heart skipped a beat. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered under her breath. She pulled over to the side of the road, her palms suddenly slick with sweat. As the officer stepped out of his car, Marissa did what she always did in moments of uncertainty. She tried to stay calm. She rolled down her window, offering a tight-lipped smile. "Evening, ma'am," the officer said, his voice flat. "You know why I pulled you over?" Marissa blinked, trying to collect herself. "No, officer. I don't think I was speeding." He didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes lingered on her for a moment, and she felt a subtle shift in the air, something she couldn't quite place. The officer took a slow step forward, his posture shifting. "Mind if I ask who owns this car?" She froze for a moment, the question feeling out of place, but she quickly answered, "It's mine." There was a brief silence. Then the officer spoke again, his voice now a little more commanding. "Do you mind if I take a look inside?" Marissa's heart began to pound. She had been stopped by cops before, but something about this felt different. Something in the officer's tone made her feel like she was being judged, like the mere act of being in this car was enough to put her under suspicion. "Is there a problem, officer?" Tyra spoke up from the passenger seat, her voice suddenly defensive. The officer's gaze snapped to Tyra, then back to Marissa. "Just routine, ma'am," he said, but his words carried an edge that didn't sit right. Marissa felt a lump form in her throat. She had done nothing wrong, yet she could already feel the tension building. The simple act of being a teenager, a black teenager, in a car on this street was enough to make her a target. But why? She had no way of knowing. This was just the beginning. The officer would soon accuse her of something she never imagined, stealing her own car. But for now, she only had the uneasy sense that something wasn't right. Marissa's fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles went white. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat pushing her further into a storm of uncertainty. The officer had just asked her to step out of the car. His tone was no longer friendly, no longer neutral. It was a command. But why? As she slowly opened the door, the chill of the night air hit her, sharpening her senses. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She glanced over at Tyra, who was staring at the officer with a mixture of confusion and growing anger. "Stay in the car." "Tyra," Marissa whispered, not sure if it was a plea for reassurance or a desperate attempt to control the situation. Tyra nodded but didn't take her eyes off the officer. Is this really necessary? Marissa asked again, trying to keep her cool. Her body was trembling, though she was doing everything she could to hide it. She had no idea what she was being accused of, but the growing sense of unease was becoming too much to ignore. The officer didn't answer at first. Instead, he looked at her, then at the car, then back at her as if deciding how best to proceed. The second officer, a younger man who had been lingering in the background, now stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed Marissa's car. "Do you have any identification on you?" he asked, his voice cold. Marissa nodded and reached for her wallet, her movements slow and careful. But when she handed over her ID, the younger officer didn't seem satisfied. He studied it for a long moment before passing it back. "Is this your car?" the first officer asked again, his voice sharp. Marissa froze. "What?" The words didn't seem to make sense. "This car is mine," she repeated, each word heavy with disbelief. Her mind was racing, trying to process the accusation. "I've had it for years. I work for it. My parents, ... The officer's gaze never wavered. "We've been instructed to question any individuals driving vehicles that match the description. You need to come with us." The ground felt like it was slipping from beneath her feet. Marissa's breath caught in her throat as she tried to steady herself, but the words kept repeating in her mind, each one more absurd than the last. "You're accusing me of stealing my own car." The younger officer stepped forward. "Step back, ma'am," he said, his voice colder than before. His hand hovered near his holster as if he was ready for something. But what? Marissa couldn't tell. "You're not helping your case by arguing." "I'm not arguing." Marissa's voice was a bit too loud now, a bit too frantic, but she couldn't help it. This wasn't right. She wasn't doing anything wrong. But the officers weren't listening. They were just moving her, directing her, their bodies surrounding her like barriers. The worst part, she could feel it. The unease, the suspicion, the quiet judgment hanging in the air. Tyra had rolled down her window now, her voice shaky. "Marissa, what's happening? What are they doing?" Marissa didn't know how to respond. She couldn't form words. All she could feel was the weight of the officer's gaze, cold and scrutinizing. She was shaking now, every fiber of her being screaming that this was wrong. But she also knew she couldn't run from it. "I'm going to call my lawyer," she managed to say, her voice trembling. The officer's lips twisted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You can call whoever you want. It's not going to change anything." The words stung. Something about them, the way he said it, filled her with a sense of powerlessness. It wasn't just the accusation. It was how quickly it all escalated, how the officers had made her a target the moment they'd stopped her, and then, without warning, a third officer arrived, a woman in her late 30s. She surveyed the scene for a moment, her eyes flitting between Marissa, the officers, and the car. She was quiet, but there was a subtle shift when she saw the two men standing by Marissa. "I'll take it from here," the woman said. Her tone was firm, but not unkind. She motioned for the men to step back. Marissa watched as they exchanged a look before retreating. The woman walked over to Marissa, her boots crunching against the gravel. She gave Marissa a brief glance and then turned to the two male officers. "You've made your point," she said to them before addressing Marissa again. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. Let me see your car registration." Marissa's heart began to pound faster. This was it. She could feel it, the moment when everything could either fall apart or be put right. But as the woman checked the car's details, she felt herself on edge, waiting for the final blow. The woman handed Marissa back her registration. "It's all in order," she said, nodding. "You're free to go." Days passed in a blur, and the video of the incident went viral. Marissa had found herself at the center of it all. The city was talking. News outlets ran her story. Civil rights organizations reached out, and activists began organizing protests. The video had ignited a firestorm. The community was speaking out about racial profiling, police brutality, and the unjust targeting of black individuals. But even as the story spread, there were still those who didn't believe her. Comment threads filled with ignorance and hate. They blamed her for being defensive, for not complying with the officers. But Marissa wasn't backing down. One day, she received a letter from the mayor's office, inviting her to speak at a town hall about police reform. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. She walked into that room, her shoulders squared, knowing that her voice mattered. The room was packed. People from all walks of life had come to hear what she had to say. She spoke about the incident, about the racism that had been embedded in the very fabric of the system. Her words echoed in the room, and when she finished, there was a palpable silence. She had done it. She had said what needed to be said. Then, to her surprise, Officer Ramirez stepped forward. The woman who had been part of the incident had returned to make a public apology. It was a rare moment of accountability, but as Marissa faced her, she knew it wasn't enough. Apologies were a start, but real change came from action. Months later, Marissa's fight had led to real change. The police department had implemented body cameras for all officers and mandatory anti-bias training. A citizens' review board was established to oversee complaints against the police. But for Marissa, the true victory came when she stood in front of a crowd at a rally for police reform, her words ringing clear as ever. The fight wasn't over, but she had made her mark. She had spoken for those who couldn't, and she would keep speaking until every black teenager could feel safe in their own skin. Her car, once the symbol of an injustice done to her, had become a symbol of her strength, a symbol of resilience, of knowing when to fight and when to stand firm. Marissa had learned one thing. It wasn't just about one incident, one apology. It was about the long, steady work of dismantling the systems that perpetuated racial injustice. And now, more than ever, Marissa was ready to lead that fight. The world had been forced to listen, and she wasn't going to stop speaking until it finally changed.